if your current mental status is best described as exhausted and wanting off the hamster wheel, and then you're thinking maybe you're on the right track, but then the next day you're like, I don't know if I'm on the right track and I feel so behind, and I want to create a level of wealth where my time and energy isn't so dependent on me making money. I want to be able to get to a space where I can give back to my family, where I can give back to charities that I find near and dear to my heart. And I don't know how to get there and how to even gauge if my timetable is off and what I need to do and what tweaks I need to make. And there's so much information out there, and all of it can feel so overwhelming. And I just want someone to serve it to me straight on a platter so that I can follow it and be done with it and make some serious money moves in May. This is the interview for you. Lindsay Fricks and I go deep into this. She is a top realtor in Arizona, and she just came out with her first book. And we're going to break it down for you, the strategy, the practical, and also the mindset. And we're halfway through the year. So this is the perfect time for you to regroup, reset, and reclaim the wealth that you want to bring into your life. Otherwise, you'll end up by the end of this year as a repeat of the year before and the year before that. And not on my watch, honey. So let's go. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, your bank account, that big, beautiful brain of yours, your mindset, and everything in between. Well, get ready for this shit, because I know y'all are tired of hearing professionals in your industry, professionals in your niche, where they circle talk you and don't actually share with you like what it took to have success in that particular area. And you don't have to be in real estate to get a ton out of this episode, okay? It's really, when you peel it all back, success has certain markers and certain requirements of things to do, and the map's already laid out for you. You just have to choose to follow it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel on it, on anything, and you're going to hear something guaranteed today that you were meant to hear. So Lindsay is someone who I've gone on several retreats with. She's my retreat bestie, and she is unwell in the mind, which is why she qualifies to be on the show. You have to be somewhat unwell in the mind and willing to own your shit, work on it, and be successful. That's really the requirements for this show, just so you know.
The best introduction ever.
So let's talk about this whole real estate game. I mean, we know the game has recently like really changed. But why did you decide, of all the things you could have done? I mean, you came from working for like a major company in corporate. So tell me this. I don't know this about you. Why did you decide to get out of the corporate game? Because you had like a very prestigious, successful career in corporate.
Yeah, I worked for corporate for 12 years, and it served me well. I think it was a great place to get like the foundation mechanics of business and everything. But I'd say like the final straw for me with corporate was I got moved to corporate headquarters in Minneapolis, which this had nothing to do with Minneapolis. I actually really liked it there. But when I looked around, I just saw all of these people pushing paper from one person to another, and nobody really had any autonomy or influence or authority over what they were doing. And I was like, oh, that's so uninspiring. I just couldn't imagine myself like in the offices at the like at 50 or 60. And like I just had to make a change. So I bounced around a couple companies kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But my grandmother had been a realtor my entire life. She was a realtor in the northern suburbs of Chicago for 40 years. And I spent every summer with her. So
Wait a second. How did I not? I mean, we all know I have some memory issues from having complex PTSD. Wait a second. I'm from North Shore, Chicago. Like, did we have this conversation? Or
I
like
mean,
we've had it like 5 times probably, and I don't remember.
I think I've only once, but yes, we have talked about this only once. So my grandmother was a realtor in Northbrook, Glenview, that kind of area.
I'm from
Evanston.
Northbrook. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Isn't that wild?
Your grandma, she has to that says a lot. That's a tough market.
It
That's
really
like the
is.
home of the Jew. And I love my Jews and they're no joke. So she
Yeah.
had to really know what was going on.
And she was, so the year I was born, 1984, she was Illinois State Realtor of the Year. I think it was in my destiny, Tiff. So I watched her just kind of grow her business. She actually started with a very tried and true technique in real estate to get clients, open houses. So she invited 9 couples to her first open house, and over the course of her 40-year career, she could track almost every sale back to that original open house, which was really, really cool. But she was just an icon. She was just a pillar of her community. Like if one of her clients was recovering from surgeries, we'd stop at Brown's Chicken and take them chicken. If like somebody was hosting a fundraiser or an event, we were making deviled eggs to take for the potluck. When we would go out to lunch at Hackney's,
I'm
everybody,
dying with
I
these
know,
references right
I
now.
know.
Dead.
So can you hear my dog's barking like crazy?
Yes, but all of us have what no one cares.
Okay, cool. I just looked up to her so much, but I came out of college in 2006. And honestly, real estate agents have a really different reputation today than they did back then. And so it just was scary to go into an industry with no recurring revenue, right? You're only as good as your last commission check. And to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial and outside of the box, but also an industry that people didn't respect. And I was coming from a career that was really respectable. And so to go into something where I felt like I had to like really just kind of like prove that it could be a respectable, trustworthy industry again was really hard. But I ultimately decided that that was my goal, right? I wanted to go into it and bring back the level of professionalism and class and poise and be that pillar of my community that my grandmother was. So that's kind of been my inspiration as I got into real estate. Now, it wasn't because I was like so excited to see all the beautiful houses, but the reality is more often than not, I'm like picking up their dog poo and that kind of stuff. So it's not as glamorous as it looks sometimes from the outside. But I just also loved that it was like there was no ceiling. You eat what you hunt, and there's no cap on your income. So yeah, so that's ultimately what led me into real estate.
What did you have to wrestle with mindset wise of leaving the golden handcuffs of having these quote unquote, I say quote unquote guaranteed salary? It's not guaranteed. They can fire you at any time or do a layoff at any time. But anyway, it feels that way. You know,
Yeah.
how did you wrestle with that and going to a totally different industry in order to get yourself to, so to speak, like put in your notice and do the damn thing?
So I had a lot of different events happen the year I turned 30, and it kind of was like before it was like the 20s versus the 30s, and it just like really changed everything. So like within 1 year, my nephew drowned and passed away. I got divorced. My parents were in a life-threatening motorcycle accident, and it just kind of like reset my tolerance for discomfort and like it changed my relationship with fear. So it was kind of went from being like, I'm afraid or what will people think to being like, well, what do I think? And how am I going to squeeze the most juice out of this life possible? And if I leave a lot of things like a lot of stones unturned, I was afraid that what became very clear to me, life is super, super fragile, that I might not get the opportunity. So I've always just kind of had this burning urgency for everything since I was a kid, but it was definitely more of that, like I went to 5 companies in 3 years trying to find my home. And I was like, nope, that's not it, right? That's not it. And then it wasn't until I went to go work for a startup where I was making a pretty low salary based on a high commission model that I kind of like built up my tolerance for not having the most steady, secure benefits and comp package. And that made it easier to make the transition. But I will say, ultimately, I also had a secondary income. My husband made good money. And I had great savings. So when I got into real estate, I had a very good cushion. I didn't have the quote unquote commission breath that a lot of people have of like, I've got to get that sale. So I think that that gave me a lot of like license to try some things and invest in my business and not feel like I was going to be unable to pay my bills if I tried it. So
I
I had to
appreciate
work
your
up to it.
honesty with that because a lot of people, they only tell the story, of like broke is a joke to success. So I appreciate you sharing that you did create a cushion because, knowing you, you are someone who's like financially, responsible and you didn't just like up and quit and have nothing, right? Like you made sure there was something there when you had all those horrific things happen in a short period of time, there's a lot of people right now who are in that spot.
Oof.
And a lot of people, reach out, they share inside my posse, they email us, and it's like, there doesn't seem to be a way out. They're being whacked around. Obviously your nervous system's dysregulated. Everything seems terrible. It's easy to go in scarcity. You've been through that. What would you say to that person who's in it right now?
Uh, First of all, just wrapping in a big hug and self-compassion. I think there's a couple different things when I think about that time. We always kind of pull from our history evidence to support whatever it is. And so one of the things I always pull from is that I've survived 100% of the difficult shit that I've gone through in my life. Like I've survived 100% of it. So I have a 100% track record of surviving everything that I've gone through in life. And that often really helps me get through it because it's just like, all right, this is not going to be the one that takes me out, right? Like I've been through all this other bullshit. Like I'm not going to not survive this. So I think just thinking back for people and finding examples of their past of where they have persevered and survived. The other piece is really just making sure that you have the right people around you, the people who are going to pick you up and dust you off when you're like, I'm not feeling it today. And, I can't do it or I'm not going to get through this. But the people that you don't have that, a lot of us have this giant gap between who we are and who we show to the world. But I think it's really important to find those people that gap is really small, if not non-existent, where you can just like really shed those protective layers and just be really honest of like, I'm circling the drain right now. And I just need somebody to say, like, you're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. So, twofold, just finding examples in your past of things that you've overcome and then having the right people around you for sure.
A brief interruption from this delightful episode to remind you there's only a few days left for my May Money Moves flash sale for my signature money course, Make More, Work Less. This is where you are going to transform your money noise, the static in your brain, that scarcity mindset into an abundant one in 7 days or less. It's a combination of modules that I've recorded for you that go along with this incredible guided workbook. And I've designed it so it's actually fun to get to the root of your money blocks so that you can uproot them, we can reframe them, and you can call in the cash that you want. I know you think all the answer is in strategy, or you're not doing enough, or you're too much of this, or you're not enough of this. I'm telling you right now, this is your missing key. This is your missing component, and you want to take advantage of it while it's still $200 off. So you can go to projectmewithtiffany.com/make more work less. Swipe up. The link is in the show notes. It's also in the description here on YouTube. While I'm listening to you, I can't help but be fixated that you have I think it's called a bust
Oh, yeah.
behind you. You guys need to be watching this on YouTube, ProjectME TV. First of all, Lindsay's very classy. Like she's like Palm Beach, like country club. That's how I describe her. and there is behind her, like, who has a bust as decor? I mean, that's amazing.
Okay, so this bus actually has like a really funny story. So occasionally my husband has to work out of my office, and the first thing he does is remove the bus because he thinks that it could possibly be offensive. And I'm like, there's no nipples on it. Like,
No, I think he should remove the bust. I would be like, I would find it peculiar. I wouldn't be offended, but I'd be like, this is a weird choice
okay, see, for a man or for me?
for a man.
Okay,
For a
okay.
man. No, I like the bust. I mean, it
Yeah.
definitely caught my attention.
So I did not technically pick the bus. So my office was redesigned a couple years ago by a dear friend, and it has all kinds of fabulous things in it because, if you're going to have to work, you might as well make it pretty, right?
Well, I think that's a great point in some of the practical tips and actions that you guys can like take right away that are within your control. Cause I fucking hate listening to interviews where people tell you all these like ethereal out there business plans that require a fortune in order to
Mm,
do, or like a whole team. And then it can leave people feeling more overwhelmed. But I mean, creating a space that makes you feel abundant, that you actually want to go into and do your work. I mean, how obviously that's important to you.
absolutely. I mean, I think your surroundings are really indicative of how you feel because it's what you see, and your brain doesn't know. I know fact from fiction, it believes what you tell it. So if I'm around all these things that make me feel beautiful and they're nice, beautiful textures and colors that I like, I definitely think that that is super important to me. It's also kind of how I dress, right? Like when I'm not feeling it, the biggest thing I do is shower and wash my hair, put on a full face of makeup and a cute outfit, and like game changed, right? Like you just sometimes need to change, like tweak a little thing. But if I'm like sitting around in my sweats and still in bed, I'm going to be like just wallowing in my self pity.
So,
But yeah,
because it changes your energy, right? And that's
right.
another action. Now, you guys know we're lucky I have like pants on. I don't have pants on right now for the record, but like I have a branded hoodie on. For me, it's about I need to feel comfy. And so for me, it's about like me feeling comfy puts me in like the creative flow. So it's
Mm,
different for everybody, but being intentional with that. And guess what? If that wasn't working, if you need to like you get in a lull in your business or in your life and you like start losing motivation, mix it up. Like, then go try like, like a new makeup look, or go try like put on something different, try different music, go work out of another space in your house. Like you got to shake up the energy if what you're doing isn't working. So this specialty that you picked in real estate, you gave me a stat, and I think you probably have it in your book, and you guys have to get this fucking book, but you can only buy it on one particular day. Like, I'm not joking. And I'll tell you what that day is in a second. And it's also in the show notes when you swipe up and in the description on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's in your book. What is the statistic? It's something crazy how many realtors there are, but like there's only a certain percentage that actually sell anything.
oh, yeah. So I don't know the national statistic, but I'm in Maricopa County, Arizona, and we have like over 60,000 licensed agents in one county. Mind you, we have like only 5 million people here. So that's just like an asinine amount of agents. We have a very competitive, dynamic market, but I mean, it's less than 5% do 90% of the volume. So yeah, it's the very few that actually do the majority of it. There's a lot of people that get their real estate license because there's a really low barrier to entry. In Arizona, it's only 90 hours of coursework that you can actually do online. And then you have to pass a test, which I personally thought was very difficult, but you can take it in a limited amount of times, right? So the barrier to entry is super low, like ridiculous. You have to have no education requirements whatsoever. So there's a lot of like, my cousin's mom, sister, friend said they'd give me a commission discount. And I'm like, cool, go for it. That sounds like a great way to protect your biggest asset.
Mm. So in this space that you knew, obviously, even from your grandmother, right? Like you knew you're not an idiot. You knew this is a competitive space. There's a lot of realtors. They advertise everywhere. You know it's a lot. what was it that you said to yourself, I know this is highly competitive, but I know I'll still be successful at it?
Oof. It's a tough question for me because I look back and I wonder how I made that decision in the moment.
Or were you like just delusional?
I mean, I think a lot of it was delusional optimism, right? So the series of events that had happened to leading to me going into real estate were unique. I had worked for a Fortune 500 company that, well, I worked for a small company that was absorbed into a Fortune 500 company less than 3 months after I was there. And they did severance by level, not by tenure. So I got director level severance after 3 months there, which was 9 months full pay.
That's not
Obviously,
bad.
no, obviously I took that. And then I just got another job at a tech startup. And then the tech startup laid off my sales team. And it was like, go get a job in CPG, consumer packaged goods. That's the industry I grew up in, or go work for yourself. And the thought of going to work for somebody else was just like the most blood boiling, skin crawling. Like I just couldn't do it. So it wasn't actually more of I really believe in myself for this other industry. It was like the thought of going back into corporate America again just was out of alignment with who I was at the time.
Same. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I knew what I was good at, but I had no idea how to be an entrepreneur. But I knew I couldn't be in the corporate pharma world. I just couldn't do it anymore. Similar reason. There's a cap unless you keep switching companies and then maybe you get a 10% bump. And then I hit a glass ceiling where, listen, in the industry I was in, I was never going to be a president, let alone even probably a vice president in the pharmaceutical world. This is reserved for old white people. Like it
Fact.
wasn't right. Like I just knew it wasn't going to happen. So when you first started, did you start how grandma started? Like, did you do the open house and invite people? Like, that's the hardest part in any business, in my professional opinion. Getting to your first $100,000 in any business is the absolute hardest part. You can do that with, I'm confident we can grow you from there. And hard in the sense of even more so, there's some grinding that has to be done. Unless you're someone where, and I know these people, and I'm sure you do too, where they're handed, maybe a parent is in commercial real estate or is a loan officer. And you know what? Everyone has a leg up, right? Like that's good for them. How did you get your first pieces of business?
So I'm not from Phoenix and I've only been in Phoenix since 2015. All of my jobs before that were corporate jobs where I was traveling a lot. So I actually didn't even have like a deep sphere of people. So I don't know what type of delusion that is to go. I'm like, I don't
You're
even
like,
know
I knew
anyone.
nobody and I'm not from here.
It's going to
So
be great. I'm going to be wildly successful. No, but I started out the same way my grandma did. When I actually told my grandma that I was going into real estate full time because I'd been licensed for a little while longer, she gave me two pieces of advice. The first one was that you have to have stick to itiveness. And it's just like that unwavering persistence in spite of any setbacks. And the other one is that everything is figure outable, that there is a solution to everything. And so I was like, okay, so I kind of had some advice going into it. And then she talked to me about how she had done open houses, and that was really how she grew her business. So I thought, what better way than to go sit in a pretty house and have people come to me. So my first year, I did 100 open houses.
that's not normal.
Not normal at all. But I figured that if I could do two things, if I could start to meet more people and grow my quote unquote Rolodex or database, whatever you want to call it, that I could convert them. I just needed to meet people at scale. So I did a lot of open houses. And then the other thing I did was I went and joined organizations that aligned with my core values. So I joined an organization that supports women empowerment. And then I joined a nonprofit that is in an animal welfare space. And I ended up on their boards, and through that, meeting a lot of people that shared similar values to me. So I'd say between those two things is really what I did. But I'm just like a go-getter, Tiff, you know that. So my first quote unquote pop buy. So pop buys are little gifts that realtors pop by to
Oh, I
drop.
get a lot of those, like the baskets.
Yeah.
I love
So
that. a high quality, thoughtful basket?
Well, you're gonna die when you hear my first pop by was Valentine's Day. So I am like trying not to blow through my reserves because I wasn't sure how long it was gonna take for me to get sales. So I made some Betty Crocker cake balls,
Dying.
like homemade cake balls. And I put them in these cute little, I got these like little paint, they were like Valentine's Day themed like little paint buckets, mini paint buckets that I put them in and I dropped them off at 10 people's house, right? Like I was like, who do I think may like cake balls and also may want to buy real estate at some point? What I learned from that is that when you drop off gifts, people post it on social media and it's organic marketing for you. So I kind of used all of these aren't revolutionary ways to grow your real estate business, but I was just kind of like trying what would work for me, what felt in alignment with my energy. I quickly found out that like people say go door knock, and I would rather throw myself off a bridge
Oh,
than door knock or cold call.
that and cold calling.
Nope.
I would rather be poor.
I
I'm not
don't,
joking.
I literally, I would be a Starbucks barista, which I would love to be. That's actually like, I feel like if I don't make it here, you
That was
might
one of my
find
first
me.
jobs. I talk
Yeah.
about it all the time. I would
I
absolutely
love
do that.
coffee. I love coffee and I just feel like they're always so happy and I feel like I'd really thrive in that like fast-paced environment. Anyways, I've obviously gone down the rabbit hole here, but I mean the levers, the strategies and tactics in real estate are like not that creative. You can reimagine what some of them are. One of the girls in my coaching program just is kind of reimagining what farming looks like. So farming in real estate is where you pick a geographic area and you cold outreach via, normally it's postcards that you would send to their house like once a week for 8 weeks, and then you'd go to every other week and then to monthly, right? Like, and you're just
Well,
trying to
let
be
me
their
stop
inbox.
you there with that. This is
Okay.
a great point for people. Did you notice what she said the strategy is? Once a week for 8 weeks, not I dropped off one basket of cake balls and sent out
Mm.
one postcard. I didn't get any leads, Lindsay. Your techniques don't work.
Ooh,
No,
yeah.
that should do you there's no advertising campaign from any major company that goes, let's run this ad for 1 week.
It's
That's
just
not even a
not,
test. That's not even a
yeah,
test. It's not going to work. You have to, you just said 8 weeks because it takes that long of that number of people to actually see the thing in order to see if it's working and or get results.
absolutely. I mean, I think in any industry, any entrepreneurial endeavor, really any business endeavor, I think the biggest thing is like you're going to do a lot of really unsexy things really frequently over a nauseating amount of time before you see the ROI for it. So it's like, who can stick to it longer, right? Like the stick to itiveness that my grandma gave me that advice, but like, I just know that I'm going to stick to it longer. So I may not be out of the gates the strongest person, but I'm definitely going to last longer. So I do everything with like a super long lens and
You
nothing
don't
is,
have an expectation like, which I think, quite frankly, is also entitlement when people do that. And I know I'm calling some of you out, but you need to hear it where it's like, well, this isn't working. Like, I've been doing this, this, and this. Well, what have you really been doing? Like, really, how much have you done? But you're right. People will give up and not be in it for the long term because they have this expectation. And I don't know, where do you think this comes from in real estate? Is it from the TV shows? Is it from social media now that I just, I throw out some advertising out there and I create an Instagram and all of a sudden, in 2 months I'm getting $1 million listing. It's like, I'm not saying there isn't an anomaly where that couldn't happen. Okay. There's always room for an anomaly, but like that's not normal, right?
no, no. I mean, and I think a lot of times it's that same syndrome that we see of comparing somebody else's chapter 12 to your chapter one, right? Like we're not at the same place. We are not the same. I did social media. You would love this. Oh my gosh, Tiff, you would have loved year one full-time real estate, Lindsay, on social media. You would have been deceased. I got up every Monday morning and I had this like ratchet blue robe. It was my husband's robe. and I would like not do my hair or anything. And I don't even think I didn't use like filters or anything. I would sit there with my coffee and I would do Monday motivation. I had this book that was like 365 days of positivity, and I would just pick one out of it. I would read and then like give my like 2 cents on like what it meant or what I pulled for it. It was the weirdest thing, but that was how I got desensitized to seeing my face and hearing my voice. I set it my own challenge for myself of like, if I can do this every Monday, and now, I've talked to my camera probably more than I talk to other people most days, but that's what you have to do. You kind of have to sometimes like trick yourself into getting done what you want to do. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing social media for, 6 years, every single day, probably 5 posts a week and stories every day. And it's a six-figure revenue stream in real estate for me, a six-figure revenue stream in my coaching program as well. So, but like I've done it every day. So, and I don't have the most like enormous following. I think I have like maybe 7,500 people, but they're highly engaged. They're the right people. And so it's just whatever you do, you have to stick to it well beyond you think it's going to. I did get a call on my very first farming mailer I ever did, and it was from another agent telling me that they loved my branding.
You're like, well, that's great. At least someone saw my stuff, though. That's what
Awesome.
I would have thought. So when you said you did 100 open houses, I want to just clarify for people that didn't mean that you had 100 listings and you were sitting at the open houses. My guess is whatever broker you were at, you were volunteering sitting at these open houses, right?
Correct. Yep. So I started with a really small brokerage and then moved over to a bigger brokerage that had more listings in my neighborhood that were in my target price point. So I also think that like I didn't know early on that it matters what type of listing you sit in. Like don't sit in listings you don't actually want the clients who are looking for those. So I'm generally sitting in a single family house that has a nice yard and a pool that's generally single story and over $1 million. Like now, back then that's not how I was, but so I did 100 open houses for other people
For
and
free, everybody, for
for
free.
for free, where people would come to me. I've gone through variations of like, do people sign in? Don't people sign in? And ultimately, what's worked best for me is I don't have people sign into my open houses because I think it's invasive to ask for information from people who don't willingly give it to you. And I am still blown away. The people I just have that connection with, the people that are your people find you no matter what. I think that's like the biggest lesson here is that if you are your authentic self, and I've heard you say this before, when you're vibrating at that magnetic level, like it people are attracted to that. And people offer me their information. I rarely will ask for someone's information in an open house or actually in any scenario. People are like, oh, hey, what's your Instagram? So I think a lot of it is, from real estate agents, we always want to work in like, I'm a realtor. Here's this. Like, you just have to be yourself and really get really authentic with who you are, what you offer, what is your special sauce, what makes you unique. And like, I love cinnamon toast crunch and tater tots. I post about them all the time. And you know what? Other people love cinnamon toast crunch and tater tots. And when I post about them, they're like, hell yeah, I love that too. Like that's rapport building. It's not necessarily like, let me show you this 5 bedroom house and all like the widgets and features. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
I like
it's a
that you
lot.
said that because think about even you guys like in any industry, when you're in scarcity, and I go look at a lot of properties because I'm an investor, right? And it's like, plus, I also really enjoy looking at high end multi-million dollar properties. It gives me great abundance. It goes, okay, this is what I want in my next level home, whatever. And I immediately within seconds, your energy walks into the room before someone even like opens their mouth.
Mhm.
I can tell right away if that agent is in scarcity or doesn't want to fucking be there. They have to be there because that's kind of like the agreement in their brokerage that they'll sit at, each other's open houses, or maybe they're a newer agent. You can tell they don't want to be there. They're sitting there on their phone. I've had people not even get up. Now, I walk in, and my dad taught me this lesson. My dad was very, very chill, like me. He was like very successful, but how he dressed, you would not know it. Okay. Now, what he drove, you would know it, but not by how he dressed, and certainly not by the watch he wore. A lot of people are like, look at someone's watch and shoes. Not my pops. You know why? Because he's the largest importer exporter of those Casio digital watches back in the day. So he wore what he sold, and those were cheap. You could buy them at Walgreens. But my dad was someone who, bought properties, and a lot of people would ignore him because of what
Mm.
he wore. I wear what you guys, if you guys are watching on YouTube right now, comment below, by the way, if you are. If I wear, this is how I dress. I mean, I'll like dress up to go out, and like glam stuff. That's fun too. But in general, this is how I dress. I can't tell you how many times male and female realtors don't even get up when I walk in the door.
I mean, it's crazy to me because in this time period where we have like TikTok stars making bazillion dollars, I mean, one of my colleagues was sitting in open house at a $5 million house, and somebody came in wearing like, slides, baseball shorts, and a hoodie, like looking like they rolled out of bed. And you can't profile people. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't, it didn't work back then, and it works even less now. And I love your tactics. So, like, you guys ask yourself, what would the abundant, I've got tons of listings, I'm a high demand realtor, I'm a high demand, whatever you do, high demand coach, high demand anything, I'm booked out. How would that person's energy be? What would I do? These people who are like, you have to sign in, sign in. Oh, sign in before I can show you the house, sign in. It's thirsty. It's gross. And you know what I do? And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I make up a name and I make up an email.
Every time.
And I find it really delightful, the names that I come up with.
You would. I would love to see the names that you would sign in with.
It doesn't work, but it's like out of scarcity. It's gross and it doesn't happen. So I love your approach with that. What did you do? There's always a messy middle, and you guys are going to hit messy middles at many different levels in your life and in your business. What happened when you were doing all the things? You knew you were doing the stuff your grandmother, taught you. You were showing up, and really not yet. There wasn't that much ROI. It kind of feels like I'm doing all this shit. I should be like, at least, getting at least like 5 properties at this point, and you got shit, or maybe you got one. How
I,
did you put yourself back in the game when you're in that spot?
I feel like I'm kind of in another spot like that right now, but
I love the honesty. We all
yeah,
hit those spots. That's
yeah.
normal.
So, if I'm thinking back to the original one, is I did have just delusional optimism, but I gave myself a really long horizon to achieve my goal, and I set the bar really reasonable. I said I want to replace my corporate income. I didn't say I was going to make $500,000, right? I said I was going to replace my corporate income. So I reverse engineered how much that would be, how many sales I needed to do at, what price point, and then I just didn't stop till I got there. Now, had I not been getting there, it would have been different, but I was trying a lot of different things. I think people undervalue the test and learn approach. I learned this in corporate America. We always had this like test and learn fund. And it was like, we wanted to do something like wild. I don't know. There'd be like a BOGO sale or something. I'm kidding. But
I love a
like
BOGO though.
wild. And, we would apply to use the test and learn fund. So it didn't come out of our bucket of funds that we normally have because we're just like testing something. And I think we all need to give ourselves permission to test and learn in our business and be a little bit more curious. But I just give myself long horizons. I stopped making volume or income related goals. And the reason why I did that is because in real estate, we are a market cyclical environment, and there are a lot of things that are outside of our control. It's very defeating to say, I'm going to make $500,000 this year and I need to sell X amount of houses to do that. And then interest rates to be 8%. And, a lot of economic and political uncertainty and wars and like things that we do not control.
And like, we're in a matrix. Like, I
Yeah.
don't even know. We don't even know what's happening anymore. We
I
have
mean,
we have a president that's not really alive.
I'm starting to, there's a lot going on. Let's not get into politics, but I totally agree. There's just like a lot of things we don't control. And so I make my goals all activity related. And I know that if I hit my activity goals, I'm going to get my fair share, if not more, of the pie. So whatever that the conditions are, whether we are in a bull or bear, whether the market is, post COVID out of control, or today where we're very balanced in my market, I'm going to get what I am willing to do. So I don't really base my activity in terms of marketing on like the ups and downs of how my business is going. It's the same every year. I've rinsed and repeated the same plan for 5 years. I maybe tweak it a little, enhance it, but for the most part, it's been the same plan. What I'm changing is I'm adding more people into it, right? So that's where the scale comes from and growing the business. It's not from me actually doing more, although right now I'm doing a lot of things because I'm growing multiple businesses at one time, hence why I feel like this is all have to be worth something.
It
But
is, I promise. We're doing
uh,
it.
but I mean, I think that that's where you have to just figure out what you're willing to do for a nauseatingly long period of time that's very unsexy, and then let the results happen. Because I'm not willing to do more than I'm doing today. I am not going to market more. I'm not going to do more open houses. I'm not going to, put myself at more networking events or things like that. Like, I'm going to do the activity I want to do. And then I don't really hang myself on like, okay, if I don't hit this number, I'm going to be really devastated. So,
Because you're only controlling what you can control. And I'm sure you guys have gathered this by now, and I can vouch for this. When Lindsay's saying like, I'm not going to do anymore, this is not someone who's entitled, who does almost nothing. This is someone where I would absolutely agree. I wouldn't want her doing anymore, because something else she talks about in her book, Becoming a Legacy Agent, which I was like, you didn't sign this copy for me, by the way.
it's because it came straight from
Oh, it came. Oh,
publisher.
okay. It came straight. Okay. Well, I'm
Um,
going to your book launch, and I expect a signed copy. So in your book, you talk about the danger of running that belief of, in order to have more success, in order to make more money, in order to get more, I have to do more. And you can really get caught up in that, and until it backfires on you. And both you and I have had experienced this with burnout. What happened to you in your burnout story?
So my burnout story was really unintentional because nobody expected what was going to happen after COVID to happen. Thankfully, I don't know what divine guidance it was, but I had hired a full-time assistant the summer before COVID. So I had help. So I had somebody helping me with my marketing, helping me with my listings, and, everything in between. But after COVID, it was just, there was so much business. And I didn't have a no muscle. Like, I couldn't say no to anyone. I was kind of in like a no if it's going to end. So you just want to get as much as you can while the getting is good.
You knew it
Uh,
was an unusual situation in your particular industry. I mean, and it was insane. I mean, you'd have to be basically a moron to not be making money.
well, that's not true. You did have to be really well skilled to get a lot of your offers accepted. But to be like a listing agent, let's say, it was different, right? Like, it was more difficult to be a buyer's agent in that. And when you're newer, at least from my experience, most of the time you start working with buyers until your buyers mature to the point where they become sellers, and then your business balances out. For me, that happened around year 5 where things started balancing out. So I worked with primarily buyers. I didn't have any guardrails around my ideal client though. So I was literally going from, the Phoenix Metro is enormous, from one side to the other is an hour and 45 minutes and like over 60 miles apart. So I would go from showing in Surprise, which is far West Valley,
Is
to
that
like,
really the name of a city?
yeah, it's called
Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah.
Dying. That's
Surprise.
amazing. It's crazy.
And it is a surprise because it totally sprouted out of like the middle of the desert and is now like this like surprise place that people love to live. Shout out if you're in Surprise. And to like the far east, southeast valley, which was Queen Creek, which like used to all be farm grounds. But nevertheless, like I was driving all over the place. I had so many clients. There was a ton of pressure. Right. That means that you showed at least that many houses to that client. So it was just a high volume. And I didn't really have any guardrails or standards around what type of clients I would work with, where I wanted to work, what type of homes I like to sell. So I struggled. I was drinking a very unhealthy level. I wouldn't say I had alcoholism because I really actually don't have an addictive personality, but I was drinking 6 to 7 nights a week. Um, I it started to manifest though in like resenting everyone, right? Like I just resented my clients for wanting to see a house. I'm like, or I would make plans with somebody and I would start to resent them. So I think a lot of times burnout doesn't actually, people don't really know what burnout means, right? It's like the collective load of everything that we carry, but how it shows up is like resenting a career you once loved. Taking things out on your loved ones. My relationship with my husband, who is a wonderful man, but like taking things out on him, disconnecting from him. So it came to fruition in a lot of different ways, but really it was like on the physically on the outside, you could tell like it had just taken its toll. I looked awful. It really forced me to get more narrow on like, who do I want to work with? What is my ideal client? Where are they? How are my intake processes different? And I think that's probably been the biggest change is like, it's actually not you interviewing me, it's me interviewing you. Like, do I want to work with you? Now, it's not perfect. I still work with people that I'm like, wow, you're crazy after I
We
thought you
can't
were.
catch all of them. There's a
No.
crazy or two that's going to slip in.
Yeah, they do. But in general, I think I had experienced burnout multiple times in my career, but I just didn't have the term. And I also didn't know how to get out of it. So I'd just been in this like sprint die cycle. Like I would go really, really hard and then I would get sick is ultimately what would happen. I would generally once a year get really, really bad bronchitis and I would be like out of the game for 2 weeks. And so I think I learned from that is like I have to understand the early signs of like what does burnout look like for me. And then through a lot of the entrepreneurial masterminds and groups that I've been in, just learning the modalities of the people who are actually making the big bucks and actually like doing the damn things that I want to be doing are putting themselves first. So they're actually the term that comes to mind is like putting your own oxygen mask on first, just like you would on the airplane. Like, how do you take care of yourself? So, is that making sure you carve out some time for yourself every day? I really do believe that everybody needs some type of breathing modality that they can default to, whether that's just like simple box breathing. I use a lot of things that I've learned in therapy since I was very young, like orienting, just looking around the room and seeing like, okay, what are 5 things that I see? What are 4 things that I hear? That kind of orienting that just brings your feet back under you into the present moment. In fact, like today I had to do these things for myself because I was a little spirally this morning. And so now I have like this tool belt, but really most people don't have a tool belt because they also don't know that they're burned out. They're just like, is it normal to hate everyone and hate my job and hate like the world? And I'm like, no, you're burned out. And a lot of that's what I do in my book. The first half of my book is really how do we help people through the burnout and isolation that's within real estate. Most people aren't talking about some of the toxic traits that we have just that come along with the emotional baggage of having, man, I mean, it is weird how we are compensated, right, Tiff? Like it's
Well, you
weird.
guys have to do an extreme amount of work for free in hopes there's still no guarantee of now realistically you'd like to think at some point if you're showing someone enough houses they're going to want one, right? Or but there's still no guarantee. And then even on the listing side, you guys pay for the marketing and all this, and I've seen people pull it, like that listing expires, it's not sold even though you did everything, and now you're out that money. I see you have like a burnout quiz even in the book. What what prompted you to write this? Because something I noticed, and this happens in a lot of industries, not just real estate, that the successful people gatekeep the real shit. And before we get into that briefly, I want to say, you guys, there's a reason the damn podcast and my brand is called ProjectME. You're the most exceptional project of your life. You don't put yourself first, you end up sick, and then nothing happens. And without your health, you have no quality of life. You certainly can't make money, and nothing else matters. So, what made you say, you know what, screw it? I'm going to put a book out there for a very specific, specifically wired person, someone who's wired like me. And I'm going to talk about the stuff that isn't talked about.
Oof. So I've always been somebody that likes to talk about taboo topics and kind of also like point out things that I'm like, that's weird. But a couple of years into my real estate career, I was feeling really lonely and really burned out. It was right about this time that everything kind of peaked in COVID and it was wild. And I decided, like many real estate agents do, that I'm going to start a real estate team. Isn't this a good idea? So I started a real estate team and very quickly learned that I did not like working with new agents. Brand new agents were really challenging. They slowed me down. They asked way too many questions, and it was just not my vibe. Honestly, humiliated. I was like, wow, I was a failure as a team lead. It didn't align with me, but it still felt like a really big public failure to have a team and then stop it. At the same time, I was in some mastermind groups, and really there weren't really any traditional masterminds within real estate that weren't like directed at like investing or like very, very tactical strategic. So I started a mastermind named Legacy Agents, and the goal was to bring successful women in real estate, so women already producing at a high level, together to create a safe and collaborative environment for them to thrive and grow the business of their life and dreams. The life of their the life and business of their dreams, something like that. Anyways, but the point was, how do we get people together that already have the foundations of real estate and help them elevate by doing the inner work? So by doing the spiritual, emotional, mental, physical type growth that we know leads to the business results that we want. And so the container is a blend of personal development and professional development. I will tell you, there's probably not a ton on the professional, strategic, tactical side that somebody hasn't already shared. So it's my take on how I started and grew from 0 to top 1.5% in the country in under 2 years. But the front half is basically a compilation of all of the coaching, therapy, and masterminds and conferences that I've been into, all the tools that I've pulled from all of these different things to put into a book that really recognizes that we have a lot of toxic things in our industry and we need a toolkit of ways to help us regulate the emotional highs and lows, the nervous system dysregulation that comes with uncertainty in when we're going to work and how we're going to get paid. So it was more of this worked really well as a container, and I felt like it was a duty to have more people who had access to it. My coaching program is a high ticket coaching program, so it's not accessible to everyone. But I wanted something that would be more accessible.
I love that. And your book is about to launch, and there is a special day that you guys need to buy it. What is the date? Where can they go? Yes, we're going to have this in the show notes in the description, but I want to make sure you hear it from Lindsay.
Yeah, my 40th birthday is May 30th. And so my book is launching on my 40th birthday. That was kind of an arbitrary goal, was to launch a book by my 40th birthday. So it will be out on Amazon on May 30th. It's very important to buy it on that one day because, Amazon algorithms are algorithming. So that's the big day. It also has a downloadable companion workbook that's going to come along with it. There's a ton of exercises throughout the book. I've been told by my first pre-reader, who was my 18-year-old nephew, who has nothing to do with real estate. He wrote me the sweetest review. It was very sweet, but that it is applicable for anyone in any industry. My husband, who is not in real estate, read it. There's a lot of things, especially in the first half of just, if you're in business or an entrepreneur, that you might find beneficial. And I hope that other people can benefit from the hundreds of thousands of dollars of therapy and coaching I've done.
I would say specifically for people who have businesses that have a similar model to real estate. So you could be in the loan industry, you could be in insurance, you could be in an industry where it's like heavily commission based, you could be in the stages of entrepreneurship. All of that stuff applies. And I know focusing a lot on the mental stuff, the spiritual stuff, the nervous system stuff sounds like, no, I just need you to tell me give me your blueprint, Lindsay. I want to know. Okay, well, she gives that too, but none of that fucking matters. If you come to me, you come to her. If you do not do what's in the front part of that book, I promise you. And I would have been one of those people. I would have actually probably skipped through. I'm dead ass. This is why I'm almost dead from burnout. I would have skipped through and been like, oh, I know, I get it. I get it. Mindset. I've had a lot of therapy, da 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 da. And I would have gone and scoured that damn book for pages like this. Okay. If you're looking on YouTube, she has the charts and the lead source and all the shit, the sphere of influence. I would have skipped to that stuff, told myself I'd come back to the other, been egotistical enough to go, I've had a million years of therapy. I know, I know, I know. And that is why we end up sick, because there's a blessing in it. And Lindsay already said it. What came out of her being sick was that she had to learn business boundaries and put better practices in place and learn to put herself first, because she already paid a price for not doing that. Same with me. And I know because of all of our conversations, what we want is so that you don't have to experience that in order to make the change, because it's not cute recovering from this shit. Okay. I still am. It can take years to recover from it. I mean,
Well,
isn't that one of your goals of doing this, is like to, maybe at least stop it before it, it snowballs into someone being non-functioning.
totally. I mean, and we just all need a tool belt. Like babies have self-soothing techniques that they come with, right? Like we as adults need self-soothing techniques to be able to get our feet back under us when things get out of control. But to your point on the strategies and tactics, like it does not matter if your belief system is faulty and doesn't support what your outcome is. If there's a disconnect between what you want the result to be and your belief system, if you don't go in and rewire that belief system so your thoughts align to the right actions to get the outcome, like you're never going to get where you're going. So if you find yourself consistently just spinning on the same things over and over again, or making the same amount of money in spite of doing more, it's probably a belief set issue and not actually a strategies and tactics. So that's why I did put them at the beginning, in hopes of, if people read any part of it, the most important part is first, which is you have to become the person. It's the who and not the do. So I think that all of those things are super important. Definitely part of my philosophy within legacy agents, within the book, and just kind of generally within life.
Well, thank you for sharing so openly with us. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because we really are so tired of people telling us what we want to hear, the story, the glory. It's like you you can't really learn much out of that. We want to learn the mistakes, the shit, what happens in the tough times when things are going great. They're going great. That's not that's not when we need all the help. And this is such a beautiful testament, to who you are, that you want to pay it forward by making this information available to more people in this book. So you guys go buy it. You can swipe up. All the links are in the show notes. It's in the description here on YouTube. And you can watch for behind the scenes in real time of all the wildness at Lindsay's 40th and her book launch party, in which one I will be purchasing a costume and perhaps doing a light whip performance.
Absolutely. It's required. You're not allowed to come without your light whip.
Love you.
Love you, Tiff. Thank you so much for having me on. You have just been such an amazing mentor and friend, and could not be more grateful that Miss Regina brought you into my life.
Well, thank you. Bye, babe.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.